The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Project Nerd as a whole.
I could let them know about the sorrow and the happiness that the future has in store for them. Maybe they could learn from it.
Let's dive deep.
Let's dive right in.
We're gonna dive deep into this.
Let's deep dive into this.
This is Diving Deep.
This is Diving Deep.
This is diving deep.
Yeah, I'm excited. We have lots of opinions on theaters.
I have so many opinions on everything, but specifically theaters and movies.
Awesome. So we are recording, and I'm just going to open with that. That's how we're going to start this episode.
That's fantastic. Secret sleuth and like ninja record.
Roll in like that. So
get them when they least expect it.
This is a very special podcast. It's a no podcast in particular. We'll probably put it in place. Probably a Nerdcast because I'm having problems recording those every week. So probably next Tuesday. But point being,
nailed it. I love it.
A special project.
Welcome. Can I say welcome to Nerdcast or something?
Or something. Exactly.
Well, hey, man, Iggy, it is so great to be here on insert name of podcast here. And I mean, it is an honor that like among the clientele of other people who have been on this podcast, I can't believe I'm here. Just
right. We'll record those. We'll record those clips in after post, but we'll have Q recorded as you.
Feel like a bunch of Pee Wee Herman boys.
Right.
Here, I'll do it. You ready? This is Jay, and you're listening to the Nerdcast.
All right. So we're having a lot of fun, but if you haven't picked up on it, I have Jay and Q from High Five, the podcast, one of our Project Nerd podcasts. This is a royalty. This is podcast royalty joining.
That's right.
Iggy.
I take it.
Right.
I'll take it.
All right.
And also Jay.
And also, so I would.
Whoa!
Look at that Knives Out background. So he's playing with backgrounds here.
Royalty.
This podcast is already off the rails. It's already.
It is so. I'm so sorry. That's welcome to our lives.
So my fault for just recording when we were in the middle of conversation.
No, I love it.
That was that. So, anyways, we have fun with it as we always do. But the point of us getting together is we've been talking a lot behind the scenes. Exchanging messages, especially a few weeks ago when we were putting up the articles as AMC and Universal went to war. The movie theater game. Obviously, it's completely changed, and I'll dive into it here in a second. But we have a lot of opinions on what's going on, where it's going to go, and everything like that. So we're like, hey, we should do what we do best. Podcast.
You know what?
Podcast
I love the confidence with which you said with what we do best.
With best, yes. So we should podcast it. But yes, that's exactly what we're doing. And I like to think we all do a pretty decent job here. Decent. I won't give us best, but decent.
You guys do a great job.
Great job.
And Q.
And well, I said you guys. I was speaking about myself.
I know. I was agreeing with you.
Oh, got it. Okay.
All right. So if for those that have been living under a rock or on the two astronauts that recently came back from
like is all of us right now.
Actually,
I was about to say,
fair.
For everybody who's been in a bunker for the last 2.5 months.
That's fair. So let me reconnect that. For anybody who has been off planet for the past 2.5 months.
There we go.
We obviously the movie theaters were some of the first to close down, most of them doing it under their own free will. For people like myself who have a subscription to the Draft House, they put it all on pause, have held us on, put it on hold. No movie showing. Of course, that led to the dominoes falling of every major studio reshuffling their 2020 schedule, some of it into the 2021 schedule as well. A few movie studios, though, decided to keep things, specifically those targeted at families, on the same release dates, sending them straight to VOD, which sparked some further arguments. At this point, even as states like Arizona and Florida and Georgia weeks ago, because they just decided to jump the gun, are allowing movie theaters to open now.
Damn it, Georgia!
Most theaters aren't. And that's because, well, now it was going to be mid-July. We would see our first big release, but now the movie Unhinged will be the first theatrical release post-Corona, I guess.
What is
my first?
Wait, remind me. What is Unhinged?
Okay, hold on. Let me give you.
Tell me for the first.
Let
time.
me give you a synopsis from my brain. All right.
Okay.
I watched the trailer 2 days ago, and this is what I remember.
Oh, you did watch the trailer. Okay, I haven't seen it.
You got classic Russell Crowe, current Russell Crowe. So like Russell Crowe that looked like he kind of went on a 40-day alcohol bender.
Yeah, okay. Like it's at the end of the tour of 30-odd foot of grunt Russell Crowe.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay,
and
great.
He is just a normal commuter guy.
Okay.
And a woman and him pull up to a stoplight. This is the trailer, basically. Woman and him pull up to a stoplight. They get into like an arguing match, and then it turns out that he is, wait for it, title of the movie, unhinged.
Cool.
And decides to like chase her down in and out of vehicles, like wantonly killing people along the way.
Wait,
it's basically falling down.
No, they were in separate vehicles, right?
Yeah, they're just like strangers.
No,
it's like this, just like road rage.
Yes, they weren't arguing with each other in the car.
The way that you described it, I thought they were like coming home from the movies together.
Well, like I said,
and then,
it
started attacking his wife as she ran out of the car.
Well, so that's the problem. They were coming home from the movies, but they got to the theater and realized it was closed.
Yeah,
and
then
Russell Crowe
and they're like,
just had enough of this.
He was like, I can take care of this. I will make a movie right now.
I love the confidence of that movie being like, yeah, we're the ones that are going to open the theater.
Solstice Studios? That's what it there's no major studio behind it. It's not like Solstice Studios is the people who put the money up, and then Universal or somebody was like, whoop, we'll take that credit. Like normally happens. It's straight up Solstice Studios like, you know what? Nothing's going to be happening before Christopher Nolan's Tenet.
Iggy, that is legitimately the like wild west of like production companies right now. They're like the standard has been upset, and so smaller companies are coming along. They're like, wait a minute, Disney is worth $440 million now. Oh no, we're taking the crown. Like we're coming. Guess what? I have
Solstice
this. I
I
have this movie that Russell Crowe filmed 2 years ago. We're the only people in the theaters right now. Our day has come.
Here's the thing. Here's my prediction. You'll have like one of those indie Christian or like religious production companies like David Scroll Productions, and they'll like slide in with a Miracle Ice movie, because like those are the people who are like, open the churches. It's like, get them in the theaters. There we go. Like slide it right in there.
We'll double up. Show up. And if you buy a ticket today, we'll also cut your hair ahead of time. So there you go.
Man, you got it. Well, that's the thing. Okay, and I can segue. Okay, I can segue that back into like the conversation for tonight. Here, I've been predicting this for a while, and Q can back me up, is event theater. Like I think what's happening and what is coming, and we've been sort of watching this happen over a little while, but there's like this paradigm shift coming of, it's not so much the access to new movies or exclusive movies or movies that we haven't seen that's drawing us to the theater anymore. It's the experience of going to the theater. And so, getting your haircut, or, a movie party like Alamo Drafthouse used to do, or, I've seen there's all these articles right now of drive-in theaters booming right now because it allows people the experience of getting out, and they can say, quarantined in their car. I've even seen articles of other restaurants like Panera Breads or things of that nature changing their business model and putting up screens in their parking
becoming
lots.
A theater.
Yes.
And becoming drive-in theaters.
Panera Theater.
So
like they use their parking lots and then charge people to watch a movie like a drive-in theater.
So let's stage a few things here. So there is, obviously, as we mentioned, the theater's closed. States are allowing reopening, but they're not. We have theaters going to reopen. We have a very stacked second half of the year in the theatrical schedule. As this is happening, Universal says, look how good Trolls 2 did on VOD, which, considering at that point it was a month in and parents were ready to throw their kids out a window.
We rented it. I rented it.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So it did extremely successful, and Universal decides to say, hey, we may consider this model for the future. AMC, who is on borderline bankruptcy already, was like, hold the phone. We don't need your Fast and Furious franchise. We don't need your Trolls franchise. We are going to say no to you. And
by going out of business.
Exactly. And so
we will say goodbye to you, Universal, by shutting our doors to everyone.
So exactly. And so chaos ensues, and this is where we are now, to where we are at a point to where movie dates are set. All the big tent poles of the summer are put back on the calendar somewhere, especially New Mutants in August, or I think maybe September.
Okay,
Yeah, well,
maybe.
It's
Maybe
only its
ooh.
5th or 6th release date that they've set.
Yeah,
I kind
okay,
of feel
we'll
like
see.
once we finally get to see it, it's gonna be like the end of Raiders, and everybody's fucking face is just gonna. Sorry, can we curse on this podcast?
Yes,
I didn't-
yes.
Okay, great. Everybody's fucking face is just gonna
Melt
melt off because they're like, we're not supposed to see this. It's not for human eyes.
Here's what I really think is going to happen is I think it's going to be like Chinese democracy, and it's going to come out and everyone's going to be like, that's fun.
It's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
It's like, it's not like the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's like, I don't know. There's like 1 or 2 good songs on there, kind of, that sort of sound like Guns N' Roses, but I don't know.
We had, that's a whole side trail. I'm going to go off on that. I worked retail when that came out, and that we had an entire section, like just a whole wall of that CD. And months later, we're putting them back into boxes to send them back.
AKA, we're filing them in file 13.
Yes.
The trash can.
So that is where the New Mutants will also find a home. But being this is obviously, we have a lot of opinions. We have a lot of thoughts.
Sure.
I think a few things to point out too, for those that are listening. We have a lot of, probably single male listeners to be exact. And I think it's important to put, because we've had some feedback on past podcasts and things too. I've talked about the Trolls 2 thing, and I want to point it out there. And Jay, you brought up a great point. Even under normal circumstances, the target audience for a Trolls 2 or for something like that is still likely to rent on a Friday night VOD when you're thinking of a family of 4. $20 for 48-hour rental. Where the kids are also going to wake up the next morning and watch it another 3 or 4 times if it's good. Is a lot cheaper than a night out for 4 to the movies, 4 or 5, average family size there. On top of the fact that if you go to the movies, you're probably going to dinner too, and you probably got to get stuff in there, or the kids aren't going to shut up. So this is a model that can survive beside the theater to a degree. It won't be as big as this. So the Universal announcement is a bigger deal and that's why AMC put their foot down, to where some people thought, who cares? Nobody's going to rent it. Yet there is an audience out there that would forego movie night.
Of course. I definitely agree with that.
I wanted to set the stage for that, because I've definitely seen a lot of feedback saying it's not a big deal, because that is ultimately the question. Is Universal, is AMC standing up because they knew Universal might be the first in a long line of studios to start exercising that model? Is the things such as draft house theaters, cinebars, stuff like that, where you mentioned they have the very special menus, they have events, they have things like that. Are those going to be the front runners when all this comes back, as AMC and Cinemark continue to struggle even further? And then finally, will movies more and more see the success of not only the family films here, but we're looking at things that are like Capone and other things that would normally sit on screen 24. Are those more and more likely now to just go straight to VOD, now that people have gotten okay or even more comfortable during this time and just renting or even buying video on demand?
If I can, I want to answer one of those questions, and I also kind of want to sideways plug, because Jay, you and I had a really in-depth conversation on an episode of High Five the Podcast that was all about the theater experience. And so
I listened to that one.
And so the kind of front runner, spoiler alert, for that episode was you and I both unanimously, even, and this episode was pre-COVID, so that was pre any of these restrictions happening.
A year and a half ago.
Any of that stuff, we determined then and there that event cinema was the driving force and what would keep theaters alive in the foreseeable future. That's kind of what we decided on, that eventually the standard theatrical window model isn't going to make sense anymore from a financial standpoint. And instead, what you'll see is more and more transitions to kind of boutique theaters with, very specific programming and specific events. And I think this COVID has kind of hit the fast forward button, if you will, on what was already kind of happening naturally.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll second that. I think that part of that experience cinema, going out to the theaters and seeing it is even on that episode, and this was again a year and a half ago, we talked about more and more movies are being simultaneously released on VOD. This isn't a new thing that was doing this. This was happening a year ago. This was happening prior to that. I think we had specifically joked about The Interview and it being banned and then released online, and then other movies that had VOD releases after that. And Trolls 2 was one of the bigger ones. The Harley Quinn movie that was released not simultaneously with opening weekend, but pretty soon, definitely way earlier than it would have been on VOD before, is we were sort of trending in that direction anyway. So COVID speeding this process up is just sort of allowing us as, I guess, viewers to say, yeah, we've always kind of had this access and you've had the ability to give us this access. And now we sort of have to do it, and we're proving to you that it's valuable. And so I think the theater industry is going to change in that it's going to have to become something that offers more than just, hey, this is a movie you can't see anywhere but here on a screen that's bigger than yours.
Right.
And
It's like
yeah.
The entropy of the theatrical experience was basically put on a time lapse now. You know what I mean? Like, instead of actually watching this happen in real time, we've now kind of jumped to the potentially the end of what that looks like. And Jay, you're 100% right. Like, it's not going to be enough, because especially now, like, if you really think about it, so as the country starts to open back up, people, there's sections of people that are super, anxious and antsy to get back out into, crowd situations. And then you have an entire other section that's very reticent and very hesitant to, like, I don't know that I feel comfortable at, patroning my local restaurant, or, even these smaller situation gatherings. And so I think what's going to happen is, to drive that crowd to weigh the potential, I'm doing air quotes, the potential risk of going out and being shoulder to shoulder with a stranger, the promise is going to have to be a lot higher than exactly what you said. Here's this movie that you can't see at home on a screen that in some cases is a lot bigger than your screen at home. But in some cases, people have home theaters. That stuff is more and more commonplace nowadays. The technology gets cheaper and cheaper every year, and it's going to take a lot more to get, I'll say it. I'm a theater lover, but I'm one of those people that's hesitant to, like, get out there and rub elbows with, my neighbor.
Especially because going to the theater always means that no matter how empty the theater is, so even if they put people 2 seats away from you, whatever, somehow somebody always ends up near you.
Yep.
And the first time they cough, the first time they spit popcorn over on you're there for 2 hours, and what are you doing? You're freaking out the whole time.
Yeah, I'm no longer thinking about the movie that I just paid $37 to see. Instead, I'm thinking about, oh my God, am I sick now? Like, am I allowed to go home after this? Do I have to go stay
and
in
then
a shit?
You're also thinking, why did I go see Contagion in the theater?
How ironic is this situation?
It's all about experiences.
A Contagion outbreak doubleheader. Why did I pay $37 to see this?
You say that, but that 100%, I'm just throwing it out there. Alamo, if you're listening, you want to get people back in the theater, you want an experience, guarantee everyone that comes to see a doubleheader of Contagion and Outbreak gets the COVID.
Guaranteed.
Like 100%, you guys will experience firsthand
it's
a
like
pandemic.
Oprah, you get the COVID and you get the COVID.
So the
like,
strong
come on out, it's contagious.
The strong points there are something that we're already, like you said, we're already seeing develop. AMC is, as we talked about it before any of this happened last year, they reported in the red and far in the red.
Yeah.
And the reason AMC and Cinemark, even though they are 2 of the 3 largest chains in the country, are still what you would call an older style experience. And by older now, I mean, you go buy a ticket, you stand in line at the concession stands. Oh, they've added a bar so you can also get a drink, but then you go sit in your seat and you watch the movie. the theaters that you guys are talking about, when I share with friends, with family, the experiences over the past so many years of the times I've gone to a movie, the ones I'm talking about is the Hook Lost Boys Feast at Alamo Drafthouse. Spent $30 and was given like a 4-course meal to watch the movie Hook. Hook was long out of the theaters. And that's not only an experience for us, like we're talking about, but on the theater side, let's break it down, because now they're selling overpriced tickets to cover the cost of food. Or if I want drinks, if I want whatever, they're waiting on me while I'm there. So I can keep ordering drinks without ever leaving the movie. That's where the money's made. On top of the fact that the way ticket sales work is big movies early in release, the studio gets a larger cut than the theater. And depending on the contract of that specific movie with that chain, it goes down after a certain amount of time, or it can change. For somebody like Drafthouse to get Hook decades after it's been out in theaters, the amount that they also get off the ticket sale is much greater than they would get off of a movie that just came out this weekend.
Absolutely.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, and that allows the theater chains to do more things in that vein,
exactly,
to stay profitable, to stay alive. I mean, a themed night of, we're going to show a triple header of Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle and all the subsequent films, and we're going to feed you a meal of White Castle, and we make a profit of 7 billion% that night. Like it allows for that to happen, but there will still be a place for theaters where the experience is going to see the end of Marvel Phase 4 in a gigantic theater with hundreds of other people to have that experience. There will still be a place for that. It just won't be in a 57 screen multiplex cinema that's still showing like Penguin 7 that was out 7 weeks ago because parents are trying to get out of their house on a Saturday. Like those types of cinemas won't be coming back from this, I don't think.
I feel like we can, and I think, okay, so to that point exactly, I think those theaters might come back, but I think we're going to see them in a totally different iteration. And this is a perfect like segue onto another, like, what does the future of these theaters look like? There's an article that's floating around right now. Obviously, there's been lots of rumors. And to bring it back to AMC, that Amazon is looking to purchase AMC theaters.
I saw that.
And one of the concepts behind that is essentially, you know, Amazon has a production company. They produce their own television series. They produce movies like The Big Sick. They would have their own direct theatrical distribution system. So, you know, no more of this, streaming movies getting snubbed at the Oscars. They have a direct pipeline to funnel their own movies, push their own product, tie in their own, services into this. And I mean, it's essentially like if Netflix purchased Cinemark, you know what I mean? Like they have a way to push their own, like, oh, you guys love The Boys season 2? Well, how about seeing the finale in our AMC theaters?
Weirdly enough, if you want to talk
watch party or whatever,
if you want to talk about like weird existential timing of all of this, do you guys remember last year when like some statutes were rolled back that allows movie studios and production companies to purchase theater chains? Yeah, that got rolled back like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
The Paramount consensus something statute. I forget.
The big movie theater Illuminati was working behind the scenes.
I know, but I'm not saying that. I'm not going down that road. That's a whole other podcast. But I'm saying that's weird timing that now, again, to your point, Q, we're fast forwarding through. This might have taken a decade to get to, but now we're seeing an article where Amazon, who makes movies, could buy theater chains, and we're all just kind of like, yeah. Yes. Probably.
Well, I mean, theaters are very much like a unionized situation. You know what I mean? They have very strict guidelines and rules regarding release windows. And that's where AMC got super uppity and hurt by Universal, is because Universal was basically saying, hey, these agreements, these long-standing agreements that we've had, well, we saw a lot of financial success from this decision that we made, so we're going to double dip. Basically, we're going to simultaneously VOD release, but we're also going to release in theaters. And the theater chains are like, wait a minute, that sounds like it very much may detract from the amount of people that come see your movie in our theater. So how about instead of you making double the profit through 2 revenue streams and us losing half of the profit, how about you guys go fuck yourself? And we just won't show your movies. Meanwhile, Amazon is like, oh, so they're sitting back watching going, yes, Universal, I see. How about this? AMC will buy you, and then we'll just do whatever the hell we want to do.
Funny note to add to that real quick is all while this is happening between AMC and Universal, Tim League, formerly CEO, still owner of the Draft House Theaters, was saying, whoa, guys, wait, VOD and theaters this is not a war. This isn't fighting. They can both coexist.
Yes.
By the way, we're launching our own.
We're doing
Alamo at home.
Alamo at home. So it like stepped right on its toes, and he's like, damn it, guys.
And see, this is where I kind of step in from a weird perspective, not from a weird perspective, but from my perspective on the whole Universal AMC argument thing. Here, we were going to go see Trolls in the theater. We were going to go see Trolls 2 in the theater had this not happened. Had it been released at home, we probably still would have gone to see Trolls in the theater. But I'll tell you one thing, like the movies like Abominable or some of those others that we're not getting out of the house to go see in the theater because we just had a newborn baby, I will rent at home. I'm not going to the theater though. Either way, I'm not going to the theater, but I can watch it and make my life better at home.
All right. So great point, Jay, talking about, I think, specific movies, even though we were kind of forced to have to do Trolls at home, with theatrical movies to some families at least.
Right.
Other ones too. I'm going to be honest, I don't even know if I'd pay the $20 to rent Abominable. Like I probably just wait until that's free on one of the streaming platforms.
I'll be honest, I got a little bummed because we did spend the money to get Onward early. And then they released it on Disney Plus, which I also have like a week and a half after that. I was like, son of a bitch.
That's okay. Disney can always use some extra money. They're struggling.
I know I hear they're struggling.
I would like to piggyback, Jay, off of what you were saying about the Abominable thing. I think that's like an interesting dynamic to look at. I do hope, fingers crossed, that what we actually end up seeing from this possible like cross-pollination of simultaneous VOD and theatrical releasing is what we might get is more mainstream studios being more willing to take some risks with some movies that may not play well theatrically. And instead they have that kind of safety net of knowing, okay, well, we can release it in theaters for a little bit and release it on VOD. And if it's just not doing well in theater, we'll pull it out of the theater. We've got the VOD sales potentially to back it up. And then we'll put it into the rental time frame, 4 months down the road from now. So it's less of a upfront kind of risk of, oh man, I really hope people come out and see this movie. And a perfect example, and Jay, you and I talked vehemently about our love for this movie, but would be Blade Runner 2029.
Yes.
Something very strange happened when that movie released, and it was absolutely loved and praised by fans and critics, but nobody went and saw the movie. Like, to the point that I can't even pronounce his name. Jay, you always do it. What's the director's name? Denis Villeneuve.
Okay.
Denis
Villeneuve.
Dude.
So
he's one of my favorites. I love him so much.
He did an interview about that movie. He came out and he said, it's kind of crushing to pour your heart and soul into a project like this, and people don't speak with their dollars. He's like, and the studio is looking at me going, why did we take this risk? Like, we let you do this property and it cost a lot of money. And he was like, if people would get out of their houses and they would come to see the movies and they would, show their appreciation and their love of this movie with their dollars, it would go further. And I think what this current kind of I don't know,
Pandemic?
vibe.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
no, no,
okay,
no,
okay,
no, no.
okay,
The
okay, yeah.
current situation that we find ourselves in, not the pandemic, but the waiting pool of cinematic releases. I feel like a movie like that would have a better chance now if it were to go into the theater for a little bit. They pull it, they release it on VOD, and it finds its audience there. Because people are, I'm more willing to sit at home. And this is weird. I'm more willing to sit at home and pay money for a movie that I'm unsure about than to get in the car, drive to a location, pay money there, sit with a bunch of strangers about a movie that I'm unsure if I'm going to dig or not.
You know,
Usually the only time I do that is it's either a classic movie at the Alamo that I know I'm going to like, or a tent pole or some sort of movie that I've already been hyped on pre the release.
I was gonna
But
say, or you would have done that back when you had Movie Pass.
Oh, for sure. I was seeing the IMY Movie Pass went out of business.
The
They were
thing
like,
is-
"Oh, we have to limit people. People are taking it. This was a terrible idea."
I
Imagine
saw so
if-
many movies that year.
Imagine if Movie Pass had like held on and just like strung on, and they barely made it, and then the pandemic hit. They're
They
like,
did.
"Ah!"
That's literally what they've been doing. Like, if you were to look up Movie Pass right now, I bet their website is still live, and they're like, "No, we're still here, guys." Like,
yeah,
Waiting
I
for
promise
July.
you,
Waiting for July.
we're still a thing. But no,
So-
realistically, like, I'm way more willing to take risks on movies in the comfort of my home. So I feel like all those oddball movies or movies that are maybe not so, driving people into the theaters,
Well,
I think they could have a better life on VOD.
Here's what's an interesting thing, and I actually do believe this is what's going to happen, is that VOD will become a valid, reliable, consistent channel. I remember if you growing up, like television was television and movies was movies, and like if you wanted quality, if you wanted to see the stories that delivered, you went and saw a movie, and then if you wanted the yucks in the news, you watched TV. And then you could see like some medical dramas and whatever here and there. And then, we've seen that paradigm shift in that regard, where now we have AMC quality and HBO quality and Showtime quality, dramatic television shows that are better than half the movies that exist. And now that's a channel where instead of creating, a movie that you would have done, you create a 5-part, television miniseries or whatever. Now I think VOD used to have the impression of, oh, well, that Vin Diesel movie got dropped on VOD. It's probably shitty.
It's terrible.
A
now
Man Apart was a classic.
Well, see, I'm glad you know which one I was talking about. And I think that this will allow VOD to be a valid channel, and then we will see the theater life move more into that experience model, and there will be tentpole. We'll have a term for it as a society, but like tentpole movie theaters that are like the Avengers, the Fast and Furiouses, the whatevers, and then the thing, and even some that would run, we'll have in Nashville, we have the Belcourt that would run like Uncut Gems and more of those types of films. And then you have a life for movies that should have an audience or can't have a wider audience but still need to be seen. They can be released on VOD simultaneously, or just VOD and not have a stigma attached to it.
Right.
I feel like we're going to see a lot more independent cinemas like Belcourt crop up. Like, I think you're going to see a lot more like mom and pop, because their niche is, we play the movies that the regular theaters aren't because they can't afford to without going out of business. So and then they'll have that dedicated grassroots community support behind it. So they'll have money from benefactors, and they'll have, their donation drives, like kind of like a public broadcasting kind of thing.
Definitely. So I want to shift our conversation a little bit, kind of close to the direction you're going, and play devil's advocate a little bit. So I think we're all on the same page that the big, we'll call them big box theaters, I don't know, like those 24 screen theaters and stuff. If not on the way out immediately, this has definitely expedited that process of them already going away to where we're seeing things like that. However, I think over the next at least 6 months to a year, they're going to see a little boost. And here's my theory for that. We're going to go back to theaters, and in almost every state, just like restaurants and everything else that's allowed to open up, it's at a capped capacity. So idea the theaters that are talking about when July comes back around, that seating's going to be to where obviously you can buy your group of tickets and sit next to each other. But for every that, then there's at least 1 or 2 seats in between you before the next people sit. Movies like Tenet, who are going to come out mid-July when nothing else is out in theaters, if you have 24 screens, you can show 5 or 6 of those screens at 7 p.m., another 6 screens at 8 p.m., and have that spaced out sitting. To where if you are a 8, 10, or 12 screen theater, you have a lot less to offer in that. And I think so, even though people like ourselves who are drawn to those draft house experiences, or the one you mentioned there in Tennessee, is even if we check there, they're going to sell out 4 times as fast considering it's 25% capacity. Then where are you going to look? You're going to look over to those big AMCs and you're going to go in there. And since you haven't been out in 3 or 4 months, might as well grab the popcorn too. Might as well grab the snacks. Let's grab a drink because I'm stressed about the guy sneezing on me behind me. Let's do the works. And so I think AMC, Cinemark, those big chains will see at least a temporary bump because of that model.
I honestly, I know I've been touting the paradigm shift this whole time, but Iggy, I couldn't agree with you more. I have been thinking this too, is as soon as we sort of reopen, depending on the state that you're in, how fast it's going to reopen may change, but I think the theaters will see a boom because it is something that we will want to do and people will feel safer than doing other things. You know, it's sitting in a room, it's watching a movie, but the idea of getting out. I agree with you. I think that those bigger ones have economically more opportunity to do that.
Right.
Q, I see you itching to say something.
Dude, I have, because I also agree, but I think it's kind of a false boot and rally. Like I think
delaying the inevitable.
If you've ever seen like there's this like theory or whatever that people who are about to die get this last boost of energy like right before they're about to die, and they come back and they're like, I'm 100% awesome and I'm talking to everybody and everything's great, and then boom, they're dead.
That happens at the end of almost every horror movie too.
Right. I think that's
and they're like, then I shot in the head.
I think that's what's going to happen. I think people are going to flock back to the theater because they want out of their house. They feel pent up and they want something to do. But I think what we're going to see is, you know, whether it's 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a full year down the road, I think as that newness and that excitement wears off, people are going to go, you know, I kind of had more fun when I was just watching this in my house. And now I can have friends over to watch it with me. So I'm just going to do that. Like, right. I think there's going to be people will have like a fondness of their memory of, man, I wish I could still go to the movies like I used to be able to. And then those same people are like, wait a minute, I went to the movies like twice last year. Like, what am I talking about? Like,
exactly.
This is I think it's going to be a false comeback.
And I think while that's happening, there will be a pull then on the opposite side to fill that vacuum, to say, I don't want to go to that. You know, why am I going to go to that? But hey, they're offering this like Alfred Hitchcock retrospective with at this other theater, and they have this like chef that, you know, is the son of a producer that is cooking the food. I'm gonna go to that.
Right.
You know, and I think the vacuum will be filled with people saying, I don't need that experience anymore because it's kind of bland, and I have found ways to get around that. But this unique experience based around film, I can't get anywhere else, and that's intriguing, and that's now what I'm focused on. Or this once fake drive-in that allows me to sit in retro cars and they deliver food to me. That's cool. I want to do that.
And once everybody's seen Unhinged and Tenet, like they're pretty much like
then they're just buying their time until Venom 2.
New Mutants doesn't.
Obviously.
Yeah, I was about to say New Mutants doesn't come out till August. So,
bullshit. $1,000 New Mutants doesn't come out in August.
Make it. You have, but there's the big thing here, and my personal experience is I love going to the theaters, and I did Movie Pass as well. When that died, AMC was running theirs, and I switched over to that.
I did that.
As soon as the Draft House in my area made that available, I dropped AMC and went straight to Draft House. And that's the thing, is once July hits, that $40.15 2-ticket charge for every month is coming out of my account again. Yeah. It's coming out whether I go to theaters or not. And it's been since, hate to say this, guys, but it's been since Bloodshot. since I went to the movies.
Oh my God. That was your last experience.
Yeah, that was my last movie theater experience. And I know
it's no man apart, but that's fine.
It's right. But I know we've got Tenet. I know we've got Mulan, and 2 weeks after that, and then 2 weeks after that was Wonder Woman, and then 2 weeks after that's another. And until the fall, every 2 weeks there's a big tent pole. To me, it's like I'm gonna right now. I'm like I'm gonna weigh that risk for every 2 weeks, but I know once I get there, I'm gonna be like, okay, wait it, I'm going. Like I'm gonna be like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like where I am in life is we just had a newborn, so I was already weighing that. Oh, I'm probably not going to that. Oh, I'm probably not going to that. That's important enough to get a babysitter for.
Right.
So now it's just an added layer of now I'm just not comfortable yet to add this on top of this to then add this. So it's probably going to be a while before we get out to the theater again.
That says a lot because, like we've said, we are the theater demographic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We are definitively the theater's most loyal patrons. So if we three are like, I don't know if I'm going to go, or, Iggy, if you're like, yes, I will definitely be going, whether I go or not, I'm definitely paying the Alamo to stay alive. Outside of that, I don't think that bodes well for the theater system if we're all kind of like, I don't know if it's enough to drive me back.
Right. And as we get closer, I'm sure, being immunocompromised myself, I always think, I'm going to be ready for this. And then I'm like, I'm staying in my house for another 2 months. So I'm like, I always talk a big game, but
you're like walking out the door and you're like,
right.
Man, you know what? Those other Disney live action remakes weren't that good.
Right.
Alamo at home, here I come.
Right. The furthest
I'm going to go watch Uncut Gems again.
Right. The furthest I've driven in 3 months is to parking space 3 for my grocery pickup.
Right.
Put it in the back. Like that's it.
Exactly.
And it'll probably continue that way. But I don't know. There's a lot of things happening, a lot of possibilities, a lot of ideas. I always joke about this. I joke about this in my career job, or as I call it, my day job, because Project Nerd's my career job, is that I'm a project manager. And as a project manager, not being able to plan that far ahead right now, I have anxiety. I have anxiety like crazy. And that definitely stems into my personal life. I like to plan things. I like to know what's going on. And not only are us as the consumers having struggles, planning that far ahead, this all, we're talking Tenet mid-July. Who all knows what could happen between now and then to where they're pulling those July movies back off the slate. Because as of right now, we're into August starting to cancel conventions and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, and there's who knows what's going to happen, but like there's all the talk and rumor of like a second wave now that states have started to reopen. And I know Tennessee is one of the states that this is the week that things started to reopen. And so to your point, Iggy, who knows, like mid-June, we may be having a very different conversation.
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
for sure.
Especially as we're starting to see other countries who were a month or two ahead of us who reopened having to consider closing back down again because of numbers going back up. It's highly likely that we'll have to be weighing those types of decisions here as well, no matter where we stand on the political or social spectrum. So,
right.
I will tell you, I'll be going to the drive-ins nonstop, though.
We have two nearby here.
I know.
Yes.
We have a brand new one that's being built as we speak and opening in July. So that will be my first theater that I attend.
They were building like a really nice special one in Nashville, and I don't know where in the process they are. But I think it got stalled because of some of the earthquakes and tornadoes and other things that happened. So,
pretty much the universe trying to wipe Nashville off the map. They're like
2020 has not been kind to Nashville.
It's like an Etch-a-Sketch, and the universe is just like shaking the shit out of it. Like, why can't I clear this?
We're gonna redraw that part. That's for sure. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, I think we're pretty close to end of time here. We probably could talk about this for hours. I know.
For sure.
We'll probably definitely get back together maybe in mid-June to discuss more further on this. But I know we all have big opinions on theaters and movies and everything like that. Stay tuned to all the podcasts on the Project Nerd Podcast Network. You're catching this one over on our Project Nerd Podcast main feed. So if you're picking us up Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you're getting us, head on over to projectnerd.com/podcast. That's project-nerd.com/podcast. Have a good list of 15 plus podcasts. some new, some been there for a while that you can check out, including J&Q on High Five, the podcast, where they talk a lot of movies. But of course, many of our other shows, Movie Night, the podcast will be back as well too. So all kinds of movie talk coming from all of us here at Project Nerd. But until we catch you at the theaters, everybody stay safe.